Would you look at that? The sun finally decided to come out this weekend. This is Murray with 3BarD Videos, and this video is going to be about me making what will probably be the final mod I make to my Type 81 named Q-Sun. The only other mod I could see me doing in the future would be a trigger job on the rifle. Even though I'm quite happy with the trigger as is, there's definitely some room for improvement. But I don't feel comfortable with attempting something like that until Tactical Imports can bring in parts kits that contain useful spare parts for the rifle and more trigger components. The current parts kit that they brought into the country, I think it's probably sold out by now, did contain like some pins and stuff, but generally the parts that I saw in that kit that came with it, they weren't something I feel would break on the rifle. So it wasn't worth buying, in my opinion. So yeah, this video is going to be about me making the final mod to this rifle, and for those of you who couldn't tell already, that is basically a new lower forend or handguard for the rifle. I decided to make something very similar to what you see on a lot of AK-74s and AKMs. So that's basically a wooden lower forend that has a palm swell, they call it, incorporated into the design. I decided to go this route simply because I really like the aesthetics of that, and I do also like the way it conforms to my hand for shooting. It's just a very ergonomic system that I quite enjoy having on my guns. So there has been some people online who have sourced out AKM forends and AK-74 forends and modified the gun to fit those. But me, because I already have a lot of experience of woodworking and some pretty handy tools, I decided it would just be easier for me to just carve out the stock from scratch, and that way I could make it exactly the way I want it to be. I start things out by transferring measurements from the original lower handguard to a maple blank that I purchased from Black Forest Wood Company. I chose maple as the material because it is a hard wood with a light natural color. This lighter color would allow me to successfully stain the wood to a wider range of colors than say that of a darker walnut blank. I make extra room on the sides of the design to incorporate the palm swell feature I'm wanting to add to the stock. I also add about an 1/8 inch of excess material to each one of the cut lines to provide me with enough sanding material in the future to remove any unwanted nicks or blade burns from the rough shaping process. To remove material efficiently and accurately, I make various rough cuts with the table saw. Being accustomed to only having a table saw at my disposal for so long, I forget to use my newly acquired bandsaw for many of these cuts. But eventually the new bandsaw is used. Having no effective means to mill out the internal stock channel with a router, I make a series of slits using the table saw. These are then carved out using a power chisel. Finer touches are made using the Dremel equipped with an aggressive HSS cutter. The dimensions for the stock's front ferrules are then marked and cut out using the Dremel. The rear radiuses are cut into the stock like the original to allow clearance for the stock to be pivoted into place. Dye is painted onto the trunnion to transfer the mounting bolt's hole location to the stock. I then start my favorite part of the building process, shaping the stock to my liking. I start this off by removing large amounts of material using the power carver, being very careful not to start any unwanted splits in the wood. High-risk areas and hard-to-reach spots are further shaped with the Dremel. The large curvature on the bottom of the palm swell is then shaped using a sanding wheel spun by a DeWalt corded drill. As I approach closer and closer to the final dimensions of the stock, I switch to gentler and gentler power tools. More shaping and tool mark removal is done with an oscillating Dremel equipped with a sanding pad. After counterboring a spot hole for the button that I chose to house the mounting bolt, I proceed to mask off all the surfaces I didn't want epoxy to get on. Once preparations were done, I epoxied the button in place. Masking was then removed and final detailing was done to prep the lower handguard for stain. The original upper handguard was then stripped down to the bare chew wood. Masking was once again applied, and the parts were foam brushed with a water-based stain. Parts were then lightly buffed with some steel wool and a layer of polyurethane semi-gloss finish was added. After the finish cured, it was buffed again with steel wool and more finish was applied. I repeated this process over the course of 5 days until I felt the finish coating was thick enough to offer good scratch resistance to the stock. Now I just need to shoot the rifle a whole bunch more and actually enjoy it for a change instead of just tinkering with it. Before Justin Trudeau takes it away from me. Hopefully that's not the case.